There are 32 NFL franchises worth a combined $150 billion, and a significant number of them are being run by people whose single greatest qualification was being born into the right family. I'm not talking about bad owners. I'm talking about something more dangerous than bad. I'm talking about comfortable owners. Owners who have never had to be right about anything in their lives because the money was already there when they arrived. That is the rot. And it is systemic. And it is why your favorite team keeps losing in ways that feel almost intentional. Let's run this through the KPI lens, because what we're really talking about is an organizational failure, not a personality flaw. The first thing inherited ownership destroys is genuine decision-making freedom inside the organization. When a son takes over from a father or a daughter from a grandfather, the org chart doesn't change, but the authority structure changes completely. GMs who would have pushed back on bad personnel moves under the founder suddenly understand, at a cellular level, that their job security has nothing to do with being right. It has everything to do with not embarrassing the owner. That's not a staffing problem. That's agency integrity at zero. Every real choice in the organization, draft capital, coaching hires, salary cap philosophy, gets filtered through the question, will this create a problem for the person upstairs? Not, is this the right football decision? When you corrupt the decision-making environment, you corrupt every decision downstream from it. That's the first domino. Here's the thing about building a dynasty. The organizations that sustain excellence, the ones that win over decades, not just when a transcendent player falls into their lap, all have one thing in common. Institutional knowledge compounds. Good decisions build on previous good decisions. The scouting department learns what the coaching staff needs. The coaching staff learns what personnel moves the front office can execute. It's a system. It has internal logic. Inherited ownership disrupts that compounding. Not always immediately. Sometimes you get 5-6 years of riding what the previous regime built. But eventually, the owner has to make a real decision. And that's when you find out whether they understand the system they're supposedly running. The Chargers, the Broncos under the early Bolin transition, the Washington franchise, across almost 2 decades of Daniel Snyder. These aren't coincidences. These are what happens when organizational systemic mastery gets replaced by ego management. This is what I want you to understand about inherited wealth and organizational culture. When you inherit a franchise, you don't just inherit the stadium and the contracts. You inherit a staff that spent years learning how to navigate your predecessor. And your predecessor was, in many cases, someone who built something. Someone with credibility, earned through either success or at minimum the threat of real consequences for failure. You are not that person, and everyone in the building knows it before you do. So what happens? The people who tell you the truth start leaving. Not because they're fired, although that happens too, but because telling the truth to someone who can't handle it is a career-ending move, and talented people have options. What's left is a staff perfectly optimized for one thing: making the new owner feel correct. This is the yes man ecosystem, and once it's established, it is almost impossible to dismantle from the inside, because the owner has lost the ability to tell the difference between honest counsel and flattery. They've never been told they were wrong often enough to recognize what that sounds like. You want to know why a team drafts the same kind of player that keeps failing? Because no one in that building is allowed to say, "We keep getting this wrong." You want to know why a franchise fires its third head coach in 5 years and hires another version of the same guy? Because the one constant, the decision maker at the top, has never been audited. Good organizational culture has friction built into it. Meaningful resistance. Scouts who push back on consensus. Coordinators who tell the head coach his scheme isn't working against this opponent. Analytics staff who say the numbers don't support this. That friction is what produces calibrated decisions. It's what separates a good organization from one that's just executing the owner's gut feeling with expensive labor. Inherited ownership systematically removes that friction, not through malice, through structural incentive. Everyone who remains in the building has learned that friction costs more than it's worth. Now you have a $4 billion organization making major personnel and organizational decisions in an environment with no meaningful resistance. And then people are surprised when it goes wrong. Repeatedly. Here's what I'd tell any inherited NFL owner who actually wanted to fix this. And I've seen enough of these situations to know that most of them don't, because fixing it requires admitting the problem starts with them. Hire at least 2 people in your inner circle whose explicit job is to tell you what you don't want to hear, and whose comp is not tied to your approval. This is not normal. It will be uncomfortable. Do it anyway. If you cannot tolerate being told you're wrong in a private room, you have no business running a $4 billion organization. Your GM and your head coach need ironclad authority over football decisions, not advisory authority. Not influence. Authority. The moment you override a football decision for a non-football reason, optics, a relationship, a narrative you're attached to, you have broken the system. Every person in that building watches. They adjust accordingly. Commit to a timeline that is longer than your ego can tolerate. The organizations that build dynasties operate on 5 to 7 year horizons minimum. If you're evaluating a head coach after 2 seasons, you are not running a football organization. You are running a vanity project with a helmet logo on it. The organizational fix is not complicated. The personal fix, the part where an owner has to accept that they didn't earn what they have and that their instincts have not been stress tested by the market, that part is nearly impossible. Most of them never do it. If you're an NFL owner watching this, and I mean the ones who actually want to build something that lasts rather than just hold an asset while it appreciates, the framework is on the table. The yes-man ecosystem is not inevitable. It's a choice. Every hire that prioritizes loyalty over competence is a choice. Every override of a football decision for personal reasons is a choice. The league is full of franchises worth billions, running on decades of accumulated organizational scar tissue. The ones that break out of it aren't the ones with the most money or the best draft position. They're the ones where someone at the top was finally willing to be wrong in public. You know who you are.